Yep. Sorry, I realized the sound was too loud. Everyone, welcome to Cassandra Lunch number 108. We'll give everyone another minute or so to file in and we'll get started soon shortly. How's the weather in Florida, Rahul? Oh, I think you might be double muted.
It's hot. I have my AC in the hotel cranked up 5 degrees. I'm now wearing a jacket. But it's been nice every day. Nice in that the weather is just good.
It's good.
Yeah. It's not that far from Miami. So you have basically Miami.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and cut the music. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cassandra Lunch number 108. Today's talk is going to be on developing enterprise consciousness with Apache Cassandra. Today's talk is going to be given by Rahul Singh, who's a CEO here at Anant, as well as an enterprise architect. Co-organizers for this event are Rahul and myself. We are looking for guest speakers as well as sponsors. So if you're interested in giving a talk at Cassandra Lunch or our sister lunch, Data Engineers Lunch, feel free to reach out to me. My email is listed below. Or if you're also interested in sponsoring Cassandra Lunch or Data Engineers Lunch, feel free to reach out to me. We are a part of Data Community DC. Data Community DC believes in building an inclusive environment, so no matter your race, gender, sexual orientation, everyone is welcome, and we expect the respect to be given to all. Data Community DC is built of a bunch of different organizations. Our sister lunch, Data Engineers Lunch, falls under Data Wranglers DC. So if you're interested in all the various organizations and events, feel free to check out datacommunitydc.org. So what do we cover here at Cassandra Lunch? We cover everything that is Cassandra, talks Cassandra, plays well with Cassandra in the ecosystem, whether that be open source Cassandra, enterprise variants like DataStax, Scylla, Yugabyte, Cosmos, Keyspaces, etc., as well as things in the ecosystem like Spark, Kafka, Airflow, and the sort. If anyone's new here, say hi, hello on the YouTube chat. Group rules, if you have a question, feel free to ask it in the YouTube chat. We'll be getting them seen for the speaker, as well as if you're knowledgeable about the topic that's being talked about, feel free to drop comments as well. Here at Anant, we design, build, and manage global real-time data analytics platforms surrounding Cassandra, Spark, and Kafka. So Cassandra is our bread and butter. DataStax is a partner and sponsor. GW University helps provide venue space when we have in-person events. We also have organizational and institutional sponsors. If anyone's looking for a job or has any jobs to offer, feel free to drop links in the YouTube chat, as well as any meetups, hackathons, conferences, classes they would like to promote. Anant is hiring full-time and part-time positions, data platform operators, engineers, architects. You can find out more at careers.anant.us. So upcoming events, we have Data Engineers Lunch on Monday. We have a talk from Alex from Dremio on Apache Iceberg. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check it out, as well as Cassandra Lunch next week. All these videos are available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/noncorp, all under the playlist of Cassandra Lunch, as well as our data engineers lunches, which are on the data engineers lunch playlist. Cassandra.Link should be our one resource for all things Cassandra. We've recently have been working on a new UI, so keep an eye on that in the next week or so. Feel free to check it out. And all the resources on Cassandra.Link are hand curated by the team here at Anant. So if you have any questions, or if you want to find videos, resources, or news in the context of Cassandra, check out Cassandra.Link. And we've now released our 6th Apache Cassandra runbook. So if you're looking for runbook number 5, sorry, it's gone. We might be releasing it in the future, but for the most part, we've released Apache Cassandra runbook number 6, where we cover audit, trace, and low repair percentage. And we'll drop a link in that to the YouTube chat. And with that, we'll hand it over to our speaker for today, Rahul.
Hey, thank you so much, Arpan, for hosting. And I'm really excited about today's topic. I actually want to apologize to the Cassandra World Party committee and community. I was due to give this talk yesterday at the 1800 UTC, which was about 2 p.m. And we had a client presentation that the agenda got changed, and I really could not escape the room for even the 5 or 10 minutes that would have taken. So, so I'm going to be presenting what I was presenting yesterday, and I will expand on it because the format of the Cassandra World Party presentations were lightning talks, so the slides would change every 30 seconds. So actually, I'm going to do that. Maybe we can clip that and send it over to them, and they can publish it later on. But then I'm going to go through it in a little bit deeper kind of context of what each of these really means. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can see. So just something, you know, we as a company at Anant really are chasing this thing called enterprise consciousness. And I'll talk a little bit about it, what it actually means. So, you know, what this presentation is actually a culmination of the technologies that are available today to try to achieve basically a real-time enterprise. So, you know, enterprise consciousness is a term that, you know, a friend of mine who's a marketer, I was explaining to him this concept that wouldn't it be great if all the data in the business, whether it's being hosted, you know, by other applications or internally, would be synchronized in real time to a central database. And that database is the single truth, you know, system of truth. And then if we made updates to that, that data could then go trickle back to whatever the sources were. And any given point, people have access to that. And he was like, that's like enterprise consciousness. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that was like a few years ago. So over the years, the technology has gotten better. And I've been, as I said, I've been chasing this for maybe the better part of 10, 15 years now. And the reason is that in probably 2005 timeframe, we noticed a huge growth in software as a service applications. And this picture is actually the Martech 5000, but there's actually like 8,000 icons on it. And that's just marketing technology. That does not include operations, HRM, you know, and the challenge is, since these are all software as a service systems, the only way to get access to the data is to pull it from an API. And the only way to update it is to push it via API. And everybody has a slightly different API. At the end of the day, most businesses, well, let me get back to businesses in a second. Most users in a business, customers, you know, staff, vendors, partners, most of them, they just want to find information, analyze it if it requires it, or use it as is and act on that information. And acting on that could be to share it with somebody else. Analysis could be in visualization, measuring something. And I'm obviously simplifying a lot of different user experiences into these three categories. And I'm specifically talking about business information. You could argue this even for consumers, right? They go to Google, which is the place to find something. They either do some analysis either by looking at different pages, or they act on it immediately. They buy something, or they read something, right? Or they share something. So the dream for a business, I would say, is how can we connect all of the software in our business platform, our digital business technology platform, as Gartner calls it, into one place? Like, how can we integrate everything so that the people, process, information, systems are all connected and synchronized? And this is just not my dream I'm chasing. This is business technology since computers came about, and since networking came about, is how do you make sure the information that is important and relevant to people is available to them when they need it? And as more and more information is created, how to make sure that information can go between users and systems. And as we get into the world of AI and ML, AI and ML is one aspect of new technologies, so that humans don't have to do that, right? The other aspect of it is IoT and robotics, which is information going to the devices so that the devices can do what needs to be done, including cars. So if you're in the software world, you may have heard of the Reactive Manifesto or the 12-factor app. 12-factor app is like a guideline to make software as a service, scalable applications basically that can serve many users. And then the Reactive Manifesto is a set of principles to make applications that are responsive, elastic, resilient, and then the way to get to it is using message-driven systems. So when I think about enterprise consciousness, I'm really thinking about the whole business, all of the systems, basically sending information to a place which is then available to everybody in a unified user experience. And there was a point when people were so skeptical about software as a service, like, oh, I don't want to put my data somewhere where I don't have control over it. And Salesforce was one of the first to buck that and said, no, you don't need software. You just need to you pay us and we'll take care of it for you. And Salesforce was one of the big ones that has led the SaaS adoption. But there were other small players like Basecamp from 37 Signals, and slowly but surely that became the de facto way to create software. And as I said earlier, because it's not in somebody else, 1 second. Sorry about that. As I was saying, since most of these apps are hosted by somebody else, people thought that, well, it's going to be hard to integrate. And so that maybe is what led the API movement to go from, hard FTP file-based integrations to SOAP, shared simple object access protocol, which was over XML. And then we have REST, which is JSON. We now have GraphQL, as well as gRPC. So there are all these different ways that are simpler and better than before, but basically it's the same challenge, that everybody has a different way to publish that information. Even though REST is a standard, GraphQL is a standard, gRPC is a standard, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like I have a customer object, it's not going to be the same exact fields in one system versus the other. So where does Cassandra come in? Cassandra is actually perfect for this. So it is designed to allow data from different locations and regions to synchronize eventually. So if you can imagine all of these different systems bringing data in, that may cause a contention in a monolithic database, right? There will be a problem. And yeah, I guess you could queue it up in Kafka and then eventually store everything. But eventually, like, the database needs to have the data as fast as possible. And Cassandra is that database to scale the writes and also be able to spread the data for reads. and it's open source. So Cassandra can work for a massive global company, and it can work for, the amount of data even a small business generates is probably, you could probably, warrant needing Cassandra at this point. So much information for all those systems. So let's see, how do we do this, right? How do we get data into Cassandra? Well, there's a lot of different ways, including programming your own thing, right? You can write your own code to go to Salesforce, get the data, transform it, whatever. And that's good. If you want to do that, go for it. But there's actually better, easier ways. The next best way would be something like Kafka Connect or Pulsar IO, which have some connectors, and basically it is powered by a messaging or a streaming technology that scales. So the more you add to it, the more it can scale, and then it can basically buffer the data into Cassandra. And that's great. And it can all work in parallel, right? But then if you don't want to program this stuff, and that's really what I was getting at, is that, how to make this easier for people. Tools like Stitch Data, Fivetran, these are commercial products. They have connectors to a lot of the stuff, right? Lots of it. I mean, if they don't have it, they'll make it, or somebody else has a connector. Stitch Data has actually open sourced their Singer ETL framework, so you don't have to necessarily pay them, but you could use their Singer connector framework and with Python and basically run it to get data out and then put it where you want to put it. But the winners, I think, of this are the open source ETL low code, no code providers. Airbyte is probably the gem. There's another one called Meltano, and there's other ones all the time. There's a thing called N8N, N8N, for basically like a Zapier-like interface. And so, I mean, you could probably use it in addition to Airbyte. But let's say you have the data in, right? You load it in, okay? And you can use a combination of these things, but then what, right? You got it. If you're a Cassandra user, all of a sudden that information is useful to you because you got it in from the outside, and now you can do CQL reads on it. You could do Spark stuff on it. You could do analytics on it, right? So processing could mean a lot of different things, and I didn't put every single way to process information in Cassandra here, but Spark is one of the major ones to do massive operations. You can do Spark, you can do Spark streaming. Flink itself is more of a stream processor, but I could see inserting Flink into a Kafka stream, for example, to do real-time processing of information. It's similar to Kafka streams itself, which is different from Kafka as a broker. It's different from Kafka Connect, which is a connector framework. But the other cool thing these days is that if you have Stargate, which is open source, it exposes the Cassandra connector as a REST API, as a GraphQL API, as a document API, which I hope they make that into a Mongo compliant API yesterday. And recently there's the gRPC, and there's kind of in the roadmap how to connect that to streams as well. So Stargate automatically takes the information that you brought in and makes it available not only to Cassandra developers, but to any front-end developer. So just imagine you got all this information brought in here, you process it, you normalize it, dedupe it, whatever, and then it's immediately available to people as APIs, right? That's massive. That alone can empower unified user experiences. Now, the magic is, how do I get it back to the systems that people are still using? It's like, once we get data from Salesforce into our system, we do stuff with it. Well, people are still going to use Salesforce, right? That's where the data is originating from. They're going to expect some update potentially. And that term is called reverse ETL, which is the reverse of extraction, translation, and load. In that you have the data. Generally, it's assumed that you have a data warehouse where you have all the information, and then you want data from your data warehouse to go to your systems that you were using. Now, you can do that with Kafka Connect. You can even do that with your own software that you write to say, hey, just take the data that we have in Cassandra and push it via their APIs, right? You can roll your own reverse ETL. But when you look at Kafka Connect or Pulsar IO, then again, you get a library of functions connectors to existing things. Even Alpaca is another one. And it gives you a standard way to basically, do connectors in high speed. But it still involves programming. There's a new class of software. Census is one of the I don't want to say my favorites, but it's definitely one of the ones that has led the movement. Census and Rivery. There's some other ones like Workato, which is more like the automation and workflow suite that can do some of this. And they're out of reach from many businesses. They're very expensive. I'm not sure exactly how much Census or Rivery cost, or Syncari for that matter. Actually, I think the Syncari pricing is out there. But ultimately, the winner, I think, here is Grouparoo. Grouparoo is an open source reverse ETL tool. And recently, Grouparoo was bought by the group that makes Airbyte. And so basically, you get the best of both worlds. You get a very robust ETL framework as well as a reverse ETL knowledge. And so I'm really expecting great things. In fact, when you go to the Airbyte page, you see some things that have sources and they have destinations. And when you put it all together, you are closer to this ideal of getting all your data, putting it in a bag, taking it to the data store and selling it, right? You're getting everything together. You can process it in one place, and then you can set it over. Now, the competitors to Cassandra would say, well, why should you use Cassandra? Why shouldn't you use Snowflake or Redshift or BigQuery for this? Because that's really the data warehouse. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use those things. I think those are very valuable systems for doing SQL-based analytics on top of data. But the reality is most of this information, you don't have to do too much actual analysis. You just want to bring it in and save it and then serve it to people, or you want to bring it in, do a quick dedupe of that information, and then send it on its way to other systems. And compared to Cassandra, the storage cost of something like a data warehouse is it's way more expensive. So Cassandra is just a cheaper place. It's the best between a data lakehouse, which is just files on a distributed file system with systems that then query it. And a data warehouse, which is like a relational database. And it's somewhere between those two and a purely online online transaction database. Cassandra can support both analytical and transactional workloads. So thinking about this, the technology is only going to get better in terms of getting data into Cassandra, getting data out of Cassandra, back to those SaaS products. Tools and technologies will continue to get better in terms of processing. There's a lot of overlap, by the way. A lot of these tools are ETL or ELT, right? Extraction, load, and then transform, or they're small t to clean, load, and then T, right? ETLT. And on the reverse ETL side, it's a fairly young subset of the technology, data operations technologies. I just expect that to get better and better and better. And there's probably going to be acquisitions and there's going to be mergers where hopefully there are some real cool winners, and hopefully all of them follow the Airbyte and Grouparoo model and they're open source. So key takeaways: don't reinvent the wheel. That's something we at Anant always repeat. Don't reinvent the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel. Identify the key object. This may not make sense for every single business object in your organization. In fact, most people do this starting with the customer information or client information, client 360, customer 360, citizen 360. And that's because they have data all over their enterprise. They get data in and they want to have a unified view of the customer, the unified view of the project that they, projects or whatever business objects make the most money. They want to have attention on it. So, start with that, right? You don't have to do everything. And then buy or use existing ETL or ELT tools. There's no reason anybody has to make their own ETL stuff anymore. Even if you have your own thing, the connector frameworks from like Singer can save you so much time to get data in a standard way. And there's so many other, low code, no code tools that are open source like Airbyte that they actually run on Docker. So you can make your own, you can take your code that you have and potentially use it in Airbyte by registering it in the Airbyte registry. Put it into Cassandra. At the same time, I would say you can archive that information somewhere else into like a lakehouse. You can also dump it into a data warehouse like Redshift or Snowflake, which is perfectly fine because Cassandra's purpose is not to compete with those technologies. And then if you want to send it back somewhere, use or buy existing reverse ETL tools. This is one of the hardest things that, was the last component in, what I'm saying is like, we're trying to chase this enterprise consciousness. Up until recently, I would not have recommended any of these things because I didn't think that these existed, or they didn't think that they were actually that great. But now, because there is competition between these tools, and there are now open source tools that's available as well, I could say for sure, don't make it on your own. There's no reason to do that. And that's kind of the presentation. I definitely took longer than 5 minutes to go through it, but I felt like doing it in 5 minutes may have been. Now that at the end of this, what I'm seeing is that there's so much packed in here that it would be hard to digest. One thing I wanted to share was that, when we started doing Cassandra and data engineering around Cassandra with Spark, one of the first projects we worked on was basically to solve this problem, and it took a long time. And I just want to show you what that entailed. And why this particular, set of tools can really save a lot of money and maybe make the business more efficient. So most businesses, they have this data platform. They may not call it their data platform, but there's data coming in and there's data going out. And as companies mature, they start to realize they can't do it on one data store. That's what I was saying, right? You can have your Cassandra database, and you can have a data warehouse. You can have a same internet's unstable. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you can hear you now. It broke up for a couple seconds.
Okay. So, this is actually a very accurate representation of one of the first projects we were working on to kind of solve this problem. And the problem was that this organization, they wanted to have a unified view of their customers and the engagements in one page, one dashboard. And basically the challenge was that information was in Salesforce. It was in some of their custom applications. It was in Cvent, BigCommerce, HubSpot. And before, like the Singer ETL framework wasn't out there for us to use. Stitch Data was starting to produce this stuff, but it was maybe a little cost prohibitive with the amount of data that they had. And so what we started off with was, let's Dockerize the different steps of these so that we can keep adding to this later, right? So we had a collection phase where the data would get pulled in the raw form from these different systems, and we would save it in the S3. And then a transformation phase would take that and in a standard form create standard CSV data, CSV files. And then that data was ready to be imported anywhere. We could take it and import it into Postgres. We could import it into Cassandra, or import it via Spark and transform it and put it somewhere. And once it was in Cassandra, and in fact, I would say that the Spark process was also used to index it simultaneously into Elasticsearch, because Cassandra search. It's improving with storage attached index and things like that, but ultimately the search was also useful for deduping. When you put a bunch of data into Lucene, whether it's Solar or Elastic, the deduping process becomes much easier. So we had to kind of do that anyways. And then once we were happy with the data, we would send it on its way to the Salesforce database, right? And then we would publish some objects, cleaned objects, into PostgreSQL to basically allow people to do business intelligence using either I think it's called Re-Dash. That's the one that was like a little bit more technical. And the other one was called Metabase, which was less technical, but both of them could talk to Postgres and do some queries on it. And this, what you see here, right, is basically what Airbyte is, and combining it with Grouparoo is allowing us to do, because in Airbyte, the connectors run on Docker. The extraction and transformations, they run on Docker. And that data can be pushed into Cassandra. And by the way, Airbyte can write to lots of different places. It doesn't have to be Cassandra. I'm just saying, like, in our design here, I would say Cassandra would be the place to drop it. And then Grouparoo and even some parts of Airbyte can take that information and send it to Elasticsearch simultaneously, send it to Salesforce simultaneously. So, what took, it must have been a 6-month project to get this all working. And then we had, several extensions. Now I would say if we had access to all the data and these tools, a properly trained person could do it in a week. That's magic, I would say. That's magic. And then there's always going to be more work to continue to, and I'm talking about just getting the data in, saving it, and sending it, across somewhere else. So technology continues to improve, but I like to say it's same shit, different day, right? We were solving this particular challenge before, and we didn't have necessarily all the tools, and we chose some conventions, and conventions are really what work. And so in this design, everything on the left-hand side here could change. Apps could change, the tools could change, and everything on the right-hand side here could change. The apps could change, the tools could change. But one thing that you can rely on is that Cassandra is going to be around for a while. And it's going to be better than the data warehouse technologies for speed. It's going to be better than lakehouse technologies for speed. And it's going to definitely be one of the best, if not the best, for transactions. So one thing that I kind of failed to show here is that even though these are external off-the-shelf SaaS applications, and here as well, the moment you have Cassandra, you can have your own applications writing data directly, reading data directly. And I mentioned it with Stargate, but it doesn't have to be Stargate. Right? All your applications can just talk to Cassandra natively. And that's it. Can maybe pause for a second and do some, any questions that have come up in the chat?
Yep, been monitoring it. No specific questions, but if anyone has any, feel free to drop them. But yeah, I guess the question for me would be, in the advent of all of these tools out there and the concept, at least here at Anant, that we have of not reinventing the wheel, have you seen more success with certain tools over other ones in the Cassandra context?
So a lot of them will start out with Postgres and MySQL support, and just because everybody, a lot of companies use, not everybody uses Cassandra, right? Cassandra is kind of a big boy tool, big girl tool. So until recently, I wouldn't have said, hey, this kind of works. But one thing is that Airbyte, for example, when they added support, just their interface is so good, it's just so slick, and it just works. So you can have, previously extraction from one place and then transformation and then loading into Postgres. You can replace the Postgres loader and replace it with the Cassandra loader, and it will just work. So it's all kind of GUI based, and you don't have to write code. As I mentioned, you could write, Docker containers to do it. But yeah, and I think we may have lost the host for a second. He's coming back. Do you lose you there, Arpan? And so while he gets his bearings straight, the other thing on the right, the reverse ETL aspect of things, it is new. Reverse ETL stuff is new. And I know Airbyte has sources and destinations, and it may just be that they absorb the Grouparoo code and put it into Airbyte. So it may not be even that you need Grouparoo, but I have not played with that particular side of Airbyte or with a group row yet. What parts of the process are you likely to have code that is yours? Let me see the full question. Have to code yourself. I wouldn't say code. I think it's going to be design. So you have to design your own data catalog of what are the objects. You're going to have to do that at some point. And I don't necessarily think that's coding, but like you're gonna have to design it in some sort of Visio or data modeling tool and say, this is our source of truth thing, right? And you'll have to make that into CQL and you'll have to put that into Cassandra, right? So data model stuff, data design stuff, you're gonna have to do. Nobody's gonna do that for you, right? This software is not smart enough to automatically, using AI and ML, categorize objects from Salesforce and say, this looks like a customer object, or there are some data catalogs that are smart enough that can kind of give you these inferences that this looks like it's a customer object and this looks like it's an email. So 90% of your information is actually emails and then the rest of 10% is garbage. So those are data catalog things, but ultimately design is going to be human. The other thing that you may have to code is, since these things are separate components, operations, DevOps is going to be key. Even if you're using third-party hosting for Cassandra, from various vendors these days, Astra, Cosmos, Keyspaces, Ivan, InstaCluster, where you do it on your own. Like you're going to have to create the database, you're going to create the schemas, and there's not a plug and chug and it works. This is still hard. So there's going to be some DevOps. And in terms of data operations, in data operations, the data engineering code, right? Only businesses know what kind of metrics or what they want to find in their data. There are some AI/ML models that can look at your data and say, hey, this is what we found or whatever, but you're still going to have to do SQL. So I didn't add it here because I think it was outside of the scope, but Presto could be used to do SQL queries on Cassandra as if it was a data warehouse, if you didn't want to store that somewhere else. But somebody still has to write the SQL code. And then so DevOps, data ops, data engineering, data science isn't that easy yet either. So, but getting the data in and getting the data out, that's getting easier. And the other thing would be if you have custom applications or applications that are not supported by these connectors, then likely you have to program it. But the benefit will be that it's part of a framework and you don't have to support all of the ancillary functions. So that that picture of 8,000 something icons on just the marketing technology in the MarTech 5000, all of them don't have connectors to these things. I mean, Airflow says they got 300, they got hundreds of connectors. They don't even have thousands. Kafka Connect has hundreds of connectors. They don't have thousands. So there's no way all those are already connected. So yeah, you still have to do some programming. Anything else?
Nope. Any more questions?
Great.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Thanks Arpin for hosting. And maybe in the data engineers lunches, we can actually show this in action. And can we in 30 minutes bring data in, do something with it and ship it back? So that'd be cool. So thanks everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day.